Hello there. So it turns out that I like card games, and today I want to talk about Slay the Spire. There's this modded character named the Robot Space Explorer, and I think he's a really cool character. I love the uncommons in this character. The Robot Space Explorer is such a cool character. You should definitely check it out if you haven't. The uncommons are really fun, and I just want to talk about cool cards for a few minutes. So that's what I'm gonna do. Just to show you my credentials, here is my recent run history with the Robot Space Explorer. This was a run that I won today with him, Ascension 11. I killed the heart. I lost, and I lost. I'm not very good at playing this game. So you might notice that there are more, just more losses than wins in my recent run history. There's a reason for that. It's because I'm bad at the game. As you can see, I haven't even reached Ascension 20 yet. This is just Ascension 10. But the fact that I've lost so many games makes me uniquely qualified to talk about the character. But I do want to talk about just the uncommon cards. Big Missile. This is the first uncommon card here because alphabetical order and stuff. Remove all block from the enemy and deal some damage. It's an attack that exhausts. The Robot Space Explorer has synergies with attacks that exhaust, and this one kills the baseball. Upgrades to remove artifact, and it's 5 more damage. This is an okay card. I find myself taking this card in Act 1, just in anticipation of using it in Act 2. But usually when I get to Act 2, I'll have some power synergy that just breaks the baseball's block, just because it outputs so much damage. This is a nice card, but I don't tend to need its remove all block from the enemy ability all that often. Blitz. I used to think this was a bad card. It's like Dash, except more expensive, costs 3, and the numbers are, they're okay. But it's like, it uses up your whole turn if you're on 3 energy, and I just don't want to spend my whole turn playing just one card, when the Robot Space Explorer as a character likes the card spam strategy. He loves playing like 10 cards a turn. Why would I play just one? Act 1 Elites. In Act 1 Elites, like when the sentries are attacking you, this gives you enough block against the Tri-Sentries to block one of their attacks and deal a bunch of damage. The Lagavulin debuff doesn't hit this card as strongly as it does others. I want to take a moment to talk about the starter card Mini Lasers. Lagavulin makes this card useless in the Lagavulin fight once you get hit by a couple rounds of debuffs. But this card here remains relevant, and 14 block is nothing to sneeze at. And so I find that this card doesn't really synergize with the Robot Space Explorer's kit going into the late game. It's just too expensive. But in Act 1 it can be pretty good. Calculate. Next turn, gain energy and salvage 1. If you upgrade it, it's 2 energy and salvage 2. The Silent has a similar card. Outmaneuver, I believe the name is. You're spending energy on a card draw right away to do absolutely nothing until next turn. Calculate is good if you have extra energy and extra card draw. That's about all I can say. I mean, it's not a useless card. There are times when I find it helpful. It's just, Discharger. I love this. This is one of my favorite cards. Discharger is a power. Static buildup cards are now ethereal, which means that they will exhaust at the end of your turn from your hand. And now whenever a status card is exhausted, it deals 4 damage to all enemies. When you upgrade, it's 7, and this stacks. So you can have, like, say, a Discharger Plus and a regular Discharger unupgraded. So when a status is exhausted, it deals 11 damage to all enemies, and that's nothing to sneeze at. Burns. Wounds. Those don't exhaust, but there's one card you can use to exhaust it, or you can use the med kit. But Daze, Void, Static Buildup, there's a bunch of statuses that you might find yourself coming across. This power is really good against the Tri-Sentries because of how many Dazes they'll put in your deck. I will take this card with no synergy and support if I'm going into the Tri-Sentries fight, because that's how good it is. I think, remember how many runs I've I've lost. I lose most of my runs, so don't take advice from me. Double block. You block, and then you block again next turn. Upgraded, it's not the best. Well, actually upgrade, I like this card upgraded. 13 block for 1 energy, and then 13 block next turn, but you pay this turn. So it's 2 energy, 26 block, but spread across 2 turns. I like it. Thing is, it's awkward to have to pay 2 energy, but sometimes you gotta do it. And, well, sometimes it works out well. This one I do like against Act 1 Elite fights, especially when their attacks are very predictable. Double Find. I don't know what to think about this card. It adds 2 random cards to your hand. They might be good, they might be useless. They're free though, so it's kind of like spending 2 energy to get like +1 card immediately. Upgrades. The upgrade on this was pretty nice. I don't know what to think about this card. I like it, it's fun. Is it good? I don't know. I don't know how good it is. Dual Core. That card won me a run today. If you can trigger this multiple times per turn, it can be pretty good. Dual Core says every time you play 5 cards in a single turn, you gain 3 Vigor, so that's like your next attack deals 3 more damage, and 3 block. Upgrades to 5. The upgrade's pretty good. That's like almost double. It's similar to the card Panache in that it is good if you're in a card spam strategy, and it's not good if you're not doing card spam. The neat thing about Dual Core that Panache doesn't do is when you play Dual Core, that counts as the first one of 5. So on the turn you play Dual Core, you just need 4 more cards to make it go off. In some decks, that's really hard to do. I find this card underperforms in Act 1, but in Act 3, if I can get this going, it's nice. It's a decent source of block. Electropulse. I really like this card. It shines in multi-enemy fights. It's like a miniature version of Immolate. Deals a hefty amount of damage to all enemies. It's nothing to sneeze at. And the upgrade, it's an okay upgrade. Well, 9 to 12 is okay, but Surge 2 to Surge 3, that I like. Adds a static buildup to your hand, but there's plenty of ways to mitigate it, especially because you Surge that same turn. Surge is a mechanic for the Robot Space Explorer that makes your attacks deal more damage on the next turn and also removes all weak. And Static Buildup is a status card that makes you weak. So Surge is like the antidote to Static Buildup. Oftentimes, if you have any sources of Static Buildup, you want sources of Surge. This one has both. And again, Static Buildup is usually a downside, but using something like Discharger, you can make it not as bad a downside. Electro Shield. This is a lot like Power Through on Ironclad. Sometimes the enemy just wants to punch your face for 30 damage, and you need to survive. This card does that. It helps you survive. I actually don't have much success with this card. I find that usually when I need to block for a lot of damage, it's because I'm about to lose the run. So like, it's not that great. Abstractly, it looks pretty good. So maybe I'm just bad at playing the game or something. I don't know what to think about the card. I like it. It's just, when I'm doing well, I usually don't need it. And when I need it, I end up losing. Exhaust Fan. I was going to make a whole video just about this card. Decided to make this video instead. But this card is really cool. Your block cards give you 2 less block, but now your attack cards give you 2 block each. Card spam is a really fun strategy. In my opinion, if you don't like it, that's fine, it's fine. But your Robot Space Explorer likes card spam. Every attack gives you 2 block. It's great in the heart fight, it's great against the Gremlin Knob, because you need to block against him somehow. And the downside isn't that bad. Also, there's a few ways for the Robot Space Explorer to gain artifact charges to prevent the debuff of losing dexterity. But I've found that even just like taking the hit, losing dexterity, can still be worth it if you play like 3 attacks a turn. And the upgrade, 2 to 3 block, it's a pretty good upgrade. I don't know what to say. Like think of Metallicize, right? It's an Ironclad card. Pay 1 energy to gain 3 block a turn or 4 block a turn if it's upgraded. Exhaust Fan is Metallicize on the condition that you play like 2 attack cards per turn, which you're going to want to be attacking anyways, so this is usually pretty good. But in Act 3 or Act 4, if you have your engine running smoothly, this can generate a lot of block. Fix. This card is like the defect power that heals you. Self-repair. It heals you immediately, which is nice. And you gain an artifact. The upgrade makes it a little stronger. Actually, the 2 artifact charges are nice. It pairs nicely with the Surge buff, because when you have Artifact and Surge, the Surge gives you temporary strength, and the Artifact charge makes that permanent strength instead. That's pretty nice. Also, just sometimes an enemy wants to make you weak and vulnerable and frail all at once, and this card can, if you upgrade it, can block 2 of the charges. Well, let's see. The next one is Freeze Ray. Why don't I just use the buttons? Whatever. Freeze Ray. This is sadistic nature, but only for weak and slightly weaker. Ha ha ha. If you are in a deck where this is good, sadistic nature is also good, but this is an uncommon, and sadistic nature is a rare colorless card, so this one's going to be easier to find. It can be good. It isn't guaranteed to be good. Unlike the Silent, who has weak in her starting deck, the Robot Space Explorer doesn't, and isn't guaranteed to find weak on every run. There's a bunch of good cards that apply weak, but you're not guaranteed to find one. So this card is useless sometimes. The fact that it costs 0 energy, though, is pretty nice, because if you draw it and it's a dead draw, well, just pay 0 energy and get it out of there. Freezing Shield. Gain 6 block, and enemy loses 1 strength this turn. Upgraded, 3 more block, and enemy loses 1 more strength. So unupgraded, it's kind of like gaining 7 block. And upgraded, it's like gaining 11 block. It's 4 more block. That's above average, but this scales against multi-attacks. I like this against the enemies that do multi-attacks, like the Hexaghost or the Book of Stabbing, Writhing Mass, or the Snake Plant. However, it can be blocked by artifact charges, and if the enemy is weakened, then reducing the enemy's strength isn't as impactful as it is normally. So I find that this card, I mean, it's better than a basic defend, and sometimes that's good enough. Often I find that this card looks a little more exciting than it actually is. Gear Shield. This one, on the other hand, is really great. That gain 1 artifact clause is pretty good. As a downside, you can only use it once before it exhausts. In a longer fight, I suppose Freezing Shield is good, but Gear Shield is good if you want to set up powers, if you want to use Surge to gain some permanent strength. You can use the artifact charge for that. Use it against the Chosen to negate the debuff, or against the enemy in Act 3 that constricts you, like the tentacle thing. Glue Spray. I don't think this is a very good card. Like, it's not useless. I had a few copies in a deck recently, and it was very powerful. But that's because I had Dead Branch, and I had a relic that applied poison to enemies whenever I exhaust cards, and I had lots of card draw and synergies. This card is like, it depends on synergies. If you have no synergies, 1 energy, gain 3 block, apply 1 weak, which realistically is like getting 5 block. Basic defend. But if you have Chemical X, if you have exhaust synergies, this triggers it twice or more, it can be good. It can be good. And upgraded, going from 3 to 4 block is kind of meh, but going from 1 week to 2 week, in my experience, is very good, because it keeps the debuff going for more turns. But I don't take this card very often, so I really don't know. Iron Shell. This gives me the vibes of Genetic Algorithm, but it's not quite as powerful as that. Or it's like, I believe the card is named Rampage, but for blocking. Every time you use it, it gets stronger, and the upgrade makes it scale faster and start out more powerful. So it's like a basic defend. It gets better every time you use it. I love this card. This goes very well with salvage synergies, because you can play it, salvage, play it again, and scale up pretty quickly. This is like one of the better block cards in my opinion, but again, there is the inherent problem of when you're blocking the enemy, you're not punching it in the face, and punching it in the face is more useful if you want the enemy to be dead. Jetpack. I don't like this card. It's an okay card. It gains you temporary dexterity, which you can turn into permanent dexterity if you use artifact charges, but I would rather use those artifact charges maybe to block vulnerable or frail, or use those artifact charges to turn temporary strength from surge into permanent strength. And on its own, it doesn't gain very much block, unless you have other block cards to play alongside it, or some way to salvage it and play it multiple times. I think I just don't know how to use this card, maybe. I don't know. It's interesting for sure. Junk Dive. This is one of my favorite cards. For 0 energy, salvage 3, or when you upgrade it, 0 energy, salvage 4. Sometimes, when you're using the card spam synergy, you play a lot of 0 cost cards, and you find you have energy left over. Well, Junk Dive is a 0 cost card itself, and that is significant. But it brings back more cards to hand. I love it. Of course, on turn 1 is bad, but every other turn is pretty good. So, if we're salvaging, this is like an amazing card. Laser Burst. For 2 energy, deals 12 damage. That's bad. That's pretty bad. Upgrade it. Deals 18 damage. That's bad. Strength scaling is what makes this card good. If you have ways to scale strength, this card can be a game winner for you. However, it costs 2 energy, that makes it a little clunky. It spreads the damage around to random enemies, which usually is pretty bad. If you can get like 4 strength on this, yeah, this is insane, but if you have like 4 strength, then you can just play mini lasers over and over and kill the enemy. So often I find this card it doesn't do quite as much as I want it to. Lucky Strike. I love this card. It's free. Whenever you salvage, if it's in your drop pile, it pops out of your drop pile and hits the enemy for 5 damage. Or 8 damage if upgraded. The worst feeling in the world, scratch that. The second worst feeling in the world is when you draw this card, like normally. You'd rather have it like in your drop pile, and then you salvage, and it goes to your discard pile. It's free damage. Doesn't use up a card draw sometimes, so it's nice. And in the event that you do draw it, well, it's a 0 energy card, so you can just play it anyways. It's not too bad. Makeshift Volley. I'm gonna skip this one. I don't use this card very often. Discard your hand? I want to play my cards. So I legit don't know. Like, this could be good, or it could be bad. I don't know. I haven't used it. Skip. Mini Boosters. Can we talk about the name for a minute? There's no space in between mini and boosters. It's like, Mini Boosters! One word. Whenever you play a card costing 0, deal 1 damage to all enemies, kind of like 1,000 cuts, and gain 1 block, kind of like After Image. Stapled together, but only for 0 cost cards. The upgrade on this is very good. Doubles its effect. That's pretty good. Problem is, this card usually underperforms for me because you don't have that many 0 cost cards in your deck. Like, the dream would be, yes, build a deck of only 0 cost cards and copies of mini boosters, like 4 copies or something. And you just deal like 8 damage to all enemies whenever you play a 0 cost card. Yeah, that's the dream. In reality though, usually this can trigger like 2 or 3 times. 3 if I'm lucky. 1 or 2 times realistically per turn. That's okay, it's not great. If you're up against the heart, you'll need something a little stronger than this. And then if you have something a little stronger than this, you might be winning anyways. But, I mean, it's nice. Plasma Missile. I've learned this. Play it early in the fight. That 3 solar flare, or 5 if you upgrade it, that can be pretty significant against Act 1 elites, for instance. It's a 2 cost card. I find 2 cost cards to be pretty clunky to play in general. This is worth it, though. 15 damage the turn you play it. That's okay. But then 3 damage each turn after that, so if the fight lasts like 2 more turns, that's another 6 damage on top of that, so 21 damage for 2 energy? Yeah, that's okay. Upgrade it, though. 20 damage the turn you play it. If the fight lasts 2 more turns, that's 30 damage. That's pretty good. Solar Flare is nice for scaling. If you have a copy of, I believe the card's name is Comet. Yeah, if you have a copy of Comet, that can be pretty good. But even if you don't, if you have no synergy for Solar Flare whatsoever, it's just 12 damage. It's better than a basic strike. Power Collector. Whenever you play power, gain 2 strength. Upgrades to become innate. That's a really good upgrade, actually, because you can deploy this at the beginning of the fight, and then when you draw your powers throughout the fight, you're getting strength. The problem is, it does nothing until you play other powers. And then, even then, when you play Power Collector, and then you play like 2 or 3 powers, so you have like 6 strength, then you have to play your attacks. But when you do, it can actually be pretty powerful. If you have a few powers, this can increase your power a lot. Ha 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 ha. Very funny. But yeah, but more seriously, this card can be pretty good if you have stuff to synergize with it. Power Glove. I don't know if it's just my playstyle or just in general. I think this card's bad. Whenever you would deal 5 or less unblocked attack damage, it increases that. The problem is, when do you ever deal 5 or less unblocked attack damage? Well, when you play mini lasers, or when you play any of those attacks that just like do 2 to 5 damage base, but usually I want to get a ton of strength until mini lasers deals like 20 damage, and then just, you know, bash the enemy's face in. Which, when you do, this power doesn't trigger. So I think this card is just bad. Maybe someone else can get use out of it? I don't know. Reload. Okay, I have to say, Reload, it requires synergy. The upgrade's pretty good, because you can choose which attack you play. Although, it's not necessary, because like if you just have... If the only attacks in your deck that exhaust, which tend to be those missile cards, if you only have good ones, then when you play Reload, you're guaranteed to hit something pretty good. This is basically an attack card if you have things to synergize with it. The one thing that is actually really cool synergy, Ritual Dagger is an attack card that exhausts, but in a multi-enemy fight you can use Ritual Dagger to take out one enemy, and then Reload Plus to use that Ritual Dagger a second time. And it will work. It will make the Ritual Dagger tick up to become stronger. So it's a nice synergy there. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. You take Reload if there are enough cards in your deck that support it. I don't know how many that is. If I had to guess, 2 or 3, I don't know. Ask some pro about it, maybe. Ray Explosive. Starts off as a 1 cost, deal 20 damage. Upgrades to 0 cost, deal 20 damage. Let's just get the obvious ones out of the way. If you have Sacred Bark, it deals 40 damage instead of 20. That's pretty good. If your potion slots are full, you're going to have to drink one of the potions to get any use out of this, otherwise it's just a waste of resources. If you have Sozu, remove this card from your deck. If you have Exhaust Synergy, it can be pretty good. If you have 0 cost card Synergy, it can be pretty good. As in, triggers your synergies. But on its own, I find this card just doesn't do much. I mean, there's a few things... It's mostly relics that synergize with potions. Alchemize is unreliable, because Alchemize gets you a random potion. Rig Explosive, first of all, it's uncommon, so you see it more often. It's not random. You know which potion you're going to get. It's Fire Potion. It deals 20 damage to a single target. Honestly, Fire Potion is one of the least interesting potions. This card's pretty nice in that you know what you're going to get. Sometimes I get it for damage, although I don't like it in Act 1, because Gremlin Knob hates this card. Scrap Shield. Gain 6 block, that's okay. I mean, it's nice. It's really nice that they tacked Gain Block onto a pretty useful card. The useful part, of course, being salvage too. If you have like 3 useful cards in your discard pile and you salvage 2, you might get one of them. You might get lucky and get 2 of them. If you get 3 of them, I'd be concerned because it's salvage 2. But I'm never like upset to see it, unless I'm looking for damage commons, because this doesn't deal any damage. But even then, if you have mini lasers in your deck or any 0-cost attack, the salvage can be helpful. Scrap Toss, another one of my favorite cards. It's a 0-cost attack. Synergizes with card spam synergy. Synergizes with 0-cost synergy. Salvage synergies. It deals damage, starts at 2, upgrades to 5. That's not a lot of damage, but if you have strength, it can be okay. But the neat part is it removes 1 stack of plated armor from the shelled parasite. It's not very much damage at all. But it's 0 cost, salvage 1, and this card goes back into your draw pile. That enables a lot of really cool synergies, such as like playing it again next turn, and the turn after that, because you keep drawing it. Also just free salvage, I like that. It's a lot like Flash of Steel in some ways. 0 cost, deal a tiny bit of damage, put another card in your hand. This is one of the cards that enables the 0 cost card spam synergy. Self-cleaning. This is a pretty unique card. It is the Robot Space Explorer's only way to get rid of status cards, unless you have a medkit, or unless you have discharge, because that gets rid of static buildup. But this can get rid of any status card. And it does synergize with Discharger. It's actually pretty nice synergy because Discharger deals damage when any status card is exhausted. Self-cleaning exhausts all status cards in your hand. A couple things to note. It's 3 block for each, upgrades to 5 block for each. That's generally not a lot of block, but it's not affected by dexterity, and it's not affected by frail. It's reliable during the Like of Woman fight, or during fights where you're made frail, and it does draw cards to replace the cards you discard. So at the very least, it's 1 energy to replace itself. Sometimes you just need to get rid of static buildups so that you don't keep drawing them turn after turn, and this can be good for that. Smoke Screen. Gain a tiny amount of block, but apply weak to all enemies. It's a tiny amount of block, but it's weak to all enemies. Upgrades to be 3 more block. It's an okay upgrade. Weak to all enemies, though, can be pretty good if you have the Freeze Ray power, if you're in a multi-enemy fight. Although if enemies have artifact charges, this card will underperform. And this card doesn't really do much else. You'll notice a theme here. I like attack cards because I synergize with a lot of stuff. I like 0 cost cards. I like 0 cost attacks. This isn't an attack and it's not 0 cost, so... But, you know, take less damage. Stardust. This is a very interesting card. There's 2 ways to play it. So what it does, every turn you gain 1 less energy, but you gain Solar Flare, so you'll deal damage to enemies, and every turn that'll ramp up, without any intervention on your part. The upgrade's actually pretty good, makes it scale faster. It's a pretty good upgrade. I like it. There's 2 ways to play it. You could just play it normally, and instead of being on 3 energy, you're on 2 energy for the rest of the fight. And it's rough, but you can do it. Or you can use an artifact charge to negate the debuff of getting less energy, and then have more Solar Flare for free, basically. I mean, it still costs energy to play the card. It's like any scaling power. It's good in long fights, it's bad in short fights. Take it when it's good, don't take it when it's not good. Star Lightning is my very favorite card in the Robot Space Explorer's kit. It does everything you want from an attack card. It deals damage. It gains block if you're fighting the Gremlin Knob. It gains block if you're fighting someone other than the Gremlin Knob. It gives you Solar Flare, so scaling. So 1 energy, 7 damage, 5 block. That's slightly better than Iron Wave. Oh, except if the fight goes on, 2 more turns after that, that's another 4 damage. So that's 9 damage and 5 block for 1 energy. Okay. Upgrading it just makes it better in every way. Deals 10 damage the turn you play it, plus 3 damage every turn after that. 7 block. It's like an Iron Wave plus, but better. And if you have salvage synergies, so you can play this multiple times, you can stack up like 6 units of Solar Flare on turn 1 and just start, killing enemies. It's nice. I love this card. I have never been disappointed to see it in a card reward screen. Deals 10 damage the turn you play it. It's kind of like Ball Lightning in that way. It's just an attack that deals scaling damage, except this one blocks also. It's great. Toxic Bomb applies weak to all enemies. Normal version is 1 weak, 14 damage. So the turn you play it, it's 2 energy, AoE weak. It doesn't feel good, considering that there's an Ironclad card that applies AoE weak. This costs 2 energy to do the same thing. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. But the next turn, it deals damage to all enemies. Not affected by, like, if you're weak or something. 18 damage to all enemies. That's okay. 14 damage to all enemies. That's okay. The fact that you have to wait for it is kind of annoying. This card is okay if you have the synergy with the weak. There isn't really anything that synergizes with the bomb. That's the name of the buff it gives you. The bomb deals damage to all enemies after a certain number of turns. So this card doesn't synergize that well with anything, but on its own, it's okay. Turbo Dodge. This is a lot like Calculate, except it actually does something. Yeah, Calculate, similar. Gain energy next turn, except this does something the turn you play it. Gain a hefty amount of block. That's like, what, more than 2 basic defense? And then upgrade it. Slightly less than 2 basic defense, upgraded. But 2 energy next turn, so it refunds itself. It's like Charge Battery. I like Charge Battery. So logic says I should like this card. The fact that it's 2 cost makes it kind of clunky. Again, just in general, I don't like 2 cost cards because they're clunky. 3 cost cards are even worse. They're so clunky. If you have enough energy to play it that same turn, and if you have enough card draw so that the next turn, the energy you gain back, you can spend on useful things, that can be pretty good. Yeah. Let's see. The next one, yeah, nope, that's all the uncommons for this character class. There's a lot of fun cards here. I like Star Lightning a lot. I like Scrap Toss a lot. Self Cleaning is a pretty cool card. I always try to make mini boosters do cool things when I see it, but it usually doesn't work out very well. Lucky Strike is okay. Junk Dive is pretty nice. Freeze Ray is fun if you can get things that synergize with it, but sometimes you can't. That's a dead card, and even then, it's not too bad. I mean, if nothing else, if you have a Power Collector in play, then your Freeze Ray will gain you 2 strength. Dual Core is like the card for running card spam strategies. You want to play 15 0-cost attacks per turn, gain block, which is nice, because if you're doing a card spam strategy, block is usually the thing you're going to want more of. Fix can be nice if you get the heal out of it every fight. You can heal up without needing to go to rest sites. Yeah, and that's all I have to say about this character. Have a nice day. And next time the heart attacks you for its like 5 times 15 attack, remember, if you gain a lot of block, like a lot of block, you have a chance at surviving.